All right, we are ready to go. So thank you all for joining. This is our webinar on mastering the email relationship. But before we get into all the good stuff, I want to introduce our lovely partners here from Twilio. Why don't you introduce yourself, Ashley and Jess? Ashley, I'll start with you and what you do at Twilio.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Ashley Ortiz. I'm a senior email deliverability consultant at Twilio SendGrid. I started at SendGrid about 6 years ago, or over 6 years ago. And yeah, just have been supporting email, our different brands, different clients, and helping everyone, or helping my accounts and my clients build their email success. So thanks for joining. Jess?
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley. My name's Jess. I am a senior deliverability consultant at Twilio as well. I started in email about 11 years ago. I've worked at ESPs like SendGrid. I have worked at other ESPs. I've worked in consulting. I've done abuse and compliance and sort of everything in between. So one of my favorite things is really helping my customers with those complex deliverability questions and help disseminate that information in a really understandable way. And that's all for me.
Excellent. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen because this is going to be more of a panel for us. So we can just talk about email and the relationship. So we kind of broke this out into 4 parts of a relationship. We've got that first part when you first meet, and then moving into this honeymoon period. You're super excited, you just signed up, you got lots of good stuff going on. And then the part where it's getting a little dull, so you got to kind of spice up the dish a little bit, make sure those taste buds are still working, and then also the parting if things aren't working out. So we're going to start off. I'm going to start with Jessica. When you first start that relationship, what are the things that, as an email marketer, you want to keep in mind when you start that first communication, or how do you get them interested? What are the first things you should do as an email marketer when someone's showing interest?
Yeah, so the first thing you should do always is get written consent. You always want to make sure you have that consent to be able to send them emails, because there's so much competition in the inbox. And if people aren't aware that you might be sending an email, or if they just don't want it, it's not going to work out well for you because, it's going to make your email program a really pricey waste of money. So make sure you get that written consent. Make sure you record the date. Make sure you record, if it's online, make sure you record the IP address of where they signed up. As much information as you can, because in case something does happen, and there are direct complaints are a thing. So you want to always make sure that you have that written proof, so you can go back to either them if they're like, I didn't sign up for this email, and then, well, you did, here's this IP address on this date, or an anti-spam organization or ESP, you can be, if they're like, well, this person reported spam, well, I have proof, here it is right here. So it really does protect you. And it also, helps really start that relationship on a good foot. You want to make sure that you're setting expectations about how many emails you're going to send. You don't want to have just a blank email form on your website that says sign up to a newsletter and then send them every day, because for me, if I hear newsletter, I think, maybe once or twice a month, but that doesn't mean every day. If you want to send to them every day, that's great. Just make sure you tell them that on the form. So setting that expectation, getting that consent is really the tip-top start of what you should be doing.
Excellent. And I like how you called out in getting the consent and documenting as much as possible. And you said IP, and in my head, and knowing that you come from abuse and compliance too, I'm thinking bots, because you can start to identify, are these real people coming in? Because if they're not, or if they're real people, but they didn't really come from a source that is legitimate, now you start to get some bad emails and potential complaints coming into your database, which is where I'm going to bring it over to Ashley. How can you protect yourself from bots and some of this bad data that can be coming in?
Yeah, so it's the number one thing that you can do, or the one thing that you can do, is make sure that you have a CAPTCHA enabled or implemented on your sign up form. and really protect all forms that are available externally to folks. So one, ensuring that you do have a CAPTCHA to make sure that you don't have any bots abusing your platform, or your sign up form is definitely good protection for you. The other thing is, I mean, moving into, confirming that you do have a user who wants to sign up, something called that we do have a confirmed opt-in. So that's very simply when you do have somebody input their email address, and you can input their email address, and then they receive an email that says, please confirm your email before you enter them into any email funnels. So there's a lot of folks that will have a confirmed opt-in, but they won't honor the link. So once somebody does send, once they do send the email verification form or link, even if the user doesn't confirm their email, they'll still enter them into email funnels, and that can actually cause more problems for your program in the long term.
Of course, I put myself on mute. Sorry, but I hear a lot of clients too where they're struggling because that first capture, they offer something really great, but it's very temporary. So I think for marketers, when you start to put out those offers, because you're like, well, coupons are a great way to get customers, try to think about how can I turn this one-time coupon into a loyalty program or something that's lasting, so you can get a sticky address. And by sticky, I mean one that your customer is not going to abandon quickly. It doesn't mean that it has to be their primary, but it has to be the one that they like to go to frequently when they're consuming your product or service. And that could be their primary. It might be something else. So that's something I like to think about. And with that confirmed opt-in, and just to your point about expectations, if you send a welcome email, I've had a lot of clients who they get the email and then no welcome comes out. There's no confirmed opt-in. And then they start getting the email and they forgot that they signed up. And it might seem odd, like, why would you forget to sign up? But I forget where I put my keys. So it was not unusual for me to be like, did I sign up for this? I can't remember, because the inbox has so many emails and so many people are buying emails, at least in the US, you're constantly getting hit. And then you're trying to think about, did I sign up for that? Or did I sign up for another service and then they shared it? And so I think if you have a welcome, there's something to go back to. You're resetting expectations, you're confirming what they're getting. And it's a good way to start that relationship, and also reaffirm all the wonderful things they're going to be hearing from you moving forward. So, and that goes back to, we're talking about an email relationship, but there's a person on the other end there. And I've heard that from another great postmaster that we know, that remember, there's always somebody on the other end. So that's what you want to think about when you're sending these. What would that person want to do, not just what the email address is?
Yeah, I just want to jump in. One of the things I always tell people to think about is, send email that you would want to receive. Don't send anything that you wouldn't want to receive or that you wouldn't recognize. For example, one of the things you mentioned sort of like getting emails from a partner or whatnot, but you want to make sure everyone recognizes your email. If I signed up to get mail at Whales R Us, I don't want to get mail from Cars Today. That just doesn't equate. So don't share lists, don't buy lists, just have that. You go through the process of having your own sign up form. And also with double opt-in or confirmed opt-in or CAPTCHA, I used to hear marketers talk all the time when I was in compliance and abuse, saying, well, people won't click the link, people won't sign up. I tell you what, I have never not clicked the CAPTCHA button, and I've never not clicked the link to double opt-in. It's just, if people want to opt in, they're going to opt in, and if they don't want to opt in, they probably don't want your email, and you shouldn't be sending to them. So just my 2 cents.
I agree. And it goes back to your expectations. If you let them know too, that they're going to be getting a confirmation email, they're going to look for it if they want it. If you don't tell them, they may not look for it. So once you get that email, let them know, I'm sending you something right now, go look for it. So you got their email and now you get that fun part. You're in the honeymoon period. Everyone's excited. You got everyone the email. They're looking for your content or your deals, and you're excited because you have someone new to market with. So Jessica, I'm going to throw this one to you again first, and then Ashley, we're going to pivot to you. But what should you be thinking about in this like exciting time? Either what you should be thinking or what you want to make sure you're not doing right after you capture that email and they're engaged.
Yeah, so this sounds a little bit like, why would I think about the ending at the beginning? But you always want to have that eventual sunset process in mind. So if you are sending to someone, let's say every day at the beginning of the relationship, and they're not opening, maybe you start sending to them like 3 times a week instead of every day. If they're not opening, then maybe it's time for a reactivation email. So always have yourself a plan. Don't just keep sending to them 7 times a week if they're not opening your email. Think about, okay, so this group of people is opening my email. Yay! This group of people hasn't opened an email. So this needs to funnel into my plan B, or what I'm going to do with how to reactivate them. So at the beginning, you have to kind of think about the ending. So that is one of the big things I think about when sending at the first time. You want to make sure you're sending those emails that people love. I mean, if someone signs up for Whales R Us, I want to get that whale information. I want to know about the whales that you're helping. I don't want like just an email to receive an email. If you some marketers, and some people have people higher up than them on the ladder that say send an email every day, send an email every week. Well, sometimes you don't have the information. So I'd much rather receive an email that is full of awesome information that I want, that I signed up for, than just a blah email.
I love that. And Ashley, how would you recommend when clients are sending in this beginning, in the first part of like, how do they really put their brand imprint through email on their customers? What are some recommendations you would give there?
Yeah. I mean, this is the honeymoon period. So this is when we kind of secure, or we're still building that foundation of trust with our recipients. So, and again, going back to just, we are interacting with humans, and this is our time when we can see what they are engaging with, what content they're engaging with, learning more about them. We're still in kind of a phase of learning. So seeing what is personalized, or what they are relating with. Make sure that your content is what you said it was going to be at sign up. So really honor those expectations that you have put in place at sign up. And then also, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought, but make sure that you have honor your expectations set at sign up. And yeah, I'm gonna I'm gonna leave it right there. I'm losing my.
Actually, we did have a question about if you're, let's say, using a lead magnet or some sort of gated content, is there a best practice for how to deliver that in the email, or is it better just to just to stay on the page? It sounds like my guess would be the answer is that it should fit the expectations of what were set at the beginning.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead if you have something, Ashley.
No, you can chime in.
That one, I think, when you talk about gated content and leads, this one I find I struggle with this one because I have my personal view of it, and then you've got the marketing view of it. Because the marketing view is like, that is an email that I can then show all these other wonderful things to, and that can maybe be a way that I can provide content that they can't get through other sources. So you can provide a lot of value. But as someone who's trying to maybe get to the gated content, if your content isn't unique enough, they may just go look for it somewhere else. So if you are going to gate it, make sure it's something that you can't just Google and find somewhere else. Make it really valuable and something that they can't walk away from. And then if you are going to force an email, let them know what else they're going to get when they sign up, not just that piece of gated content, but let them know I'm also going to be marketing to you, and I'm going to give you content that maybe you can't just find online, that it's just to you. So make it desirable where they can't walk away. I don't know if that answers the question.
Exactly. Like when we, if we do the occasional lead magnet, we're not taking that, email address and then putting it on our newsletter. It's like they didn't really sign up for that. I'm not sure if that's a best practice, but yeah, we just want to make sure that whatever we send them as far as follow-ups is very, very relevant and something that they would probably want to read. Thanks.
Yeah. So Ashley, thinking about, you talked about expectations, be who you are, do what you are, honor what you said you were going to do. How can you put that into an onboarding series or automations? Or do you think it should be very one-off? Because you mentioned personalization in there too. So how can you incorporate all of this into that first part so that you can really make an imprint on, this is what you should expecting from me? Because I think sometimes people sign up for something and they may not know all of the steps that are going to be coming, and how do you nurture that in the very beginning to still meet what you're going to do, but then also add in those nice little touches with the personalization?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remembered what I was going to say. So I would say be intentional with what you're sending, one. Going back to, again, we're interacting with humans. We want to be intentional with what we're saying and make sure that the content is relevant. I think a really good way to lead and introduce yourself is through a welcome email. So just, like once they sign up, they verify their email and it's right away, hey, this is us. Thanks so much for signing up, being a part of our family, joining our team. This is what you can expect to hear from us. Even here's a code, 10% off for your first purchase with us, just because we are happy that you're here. And really, cherishing them, saying we're happy you're here. If they do not, engage with your first couple emails, that's a signal to you. Maybe each sender is going to be, each recipient is going to be different. So paying close attention to the data that you do have for each recipient, and then also in your entire customer lifecycle is helpful. So if we're seeing that folks are dropping off an engagement with maybe in our first 3 emails, for example, maybe there's something that we want to pivot, we want to adjust. Maybe we gave too much up front and we need to kind of trickle people along a little bit longer. Or not trickle them along, but keep them engaged a little bit longer, because there is an incentive for being engaged with your emails. So I think, one, to answer your question, a welcome email is a great way to introduce yourself. It's your handshake of confirming this is commitment. They're safe with you, and they can expect relevant content. They can expect all their whales are us or whales in the wild content that they signed up for. And I think also just making sure, I think we touched on this a little bit, but making sure that you're sending your first party content. So you have your brand logo up front in all of your emails, and you're not sprinkling in too many other logos that may overwhelm the user. So yeah.
And I like everything you've said today. You mention it, you touch on it, is data. Get your data, know your customers and all that stuff. So thinking about that and how that moves into kind of the next phase of the relationship. And if 3 days are falling off, that was a very short honeymoon. But how do you take that data? How do you adjust a program, or how do you identify that maybe something does need to change? What are things that you look for? Ashley, I'll start with you since Jessica, I'll start with you since I've made Ashley talk nonstop. But what are the things that you look for as you start to move on to say, okay, things need to change a little bit?
Yeah, so if maybe they're not interacting with you as much as you would like, or you don't have the data, you're not receiving the data, maybe this is a good time to give them an email that says, hey, we have this type of emails that we send. What are you interested in? I mean, maybe someone will be like, well, I don't want to get all of these emails about the ocean and the whole. I just want the whales. So I'm beating this analogy. It's just, that's how it's going to be. So, giving people a choice. Maybe this is the time where you can drive them to an SMS campaign if you have this, be like, do you want to join? Do you want to get texts? Maybe this is a time where you drive them to other platforms like Facebook or Instagram or, TikTok. Maybe you can say, we have this email content that's great, but have you gone to our TikTok and seen what we have to offer there? Maybe that drives them that way. But, making sure that you are keeping an eye on that pulse of everything that is actually happening throughout this whole thing, seeing, if they do they click the link to go back to the website? Do they click the link to go to the social media and see what they might prefer? Maybe if they're going to the social media, maybe you can give them like at the end of the week, a little summary of all the cool social media posts. Oh my God, I sounded like an old person right there. Cool social media posts. But like maybe be like, oh, did you see this TikTok? It went viral. So, maybe this is a time to drive them to your other platforms. Yeah, did I answer that question? I'm going to say I answered that question.
And I like the idea of, when you think about this part of the life cycle with a customer, what is it that you can do to make the relationship really fulfilling and unique? And Ashley, you mentioned this before and you talked about personalization, but what more can you do personalization? Not just a first name. You mentioned earlier to me about regional. I don't know if you want to discuss that a little bit, because I think that's really pertinent when you talk about, I'll let you talk about it. I'm going to stop because I'm going to give it away.
Yeah, no, I think definitely regional I'll backtrack a little bit. So one, all the information that you do ask at sign up, I think, again, being intentional of what you're asking, how you can use that into spice up the relationship a little bit more. So in terms of regional, sending emails that are personalized and for example, so if if there are different activities or events going on in the area of your recipient. So, hey, there's an upcoming concert. Your favorite artist is going to be in your area. Here's where you can, sign up and support them, or you can support from afar if you can't make it. Those types of things where you're really paying attention to the data that your user is providing you just by what they're engaged in, and maybe their app activity if you have that data available to you, and then using it to enhance their life. If someone if they want to go to an event that's close by to you, up to them, and just letting them know what's going on in their area. We all know that the world, since the pandemic has been wild and life-changing. So, just maybe adding just a little bit of spice to their life or their daily routine, I would say, and using that regional data or the data they have provided you to give back a little bit to them.
I like that. It makes me think of, I feel like the pandemic's going to become the word that shall not be named at some point or shall not be spoken. But it really changed a lot for everybody. And I think being aware of that and saying, what else can I do with my program that benefits us both, but also gives something more to that end user to make life a little accessible? Because I think there are some of your customers that may say, gosh, I still get nervous going out and about. There's still notices of COVID spikes or whatever. And so how can you make the world more accessible for everybody? You can do that through your email. You can mention certain things if it's regional so that they don't have to go and plan big trips, or especially with a recession coming in, what can you do so they can still experience stuff if there's a monetary shortage for them? And then think about at this time, people change too. I think about this a lot. There's one particular brand that I used to get daily. And as a mom, I was awesome because I'm like, my kids are filthy. I need to get updated clothes for them all the time. But then as my kids got older and maybe they're not constantly slobbering all over themselves, I love my kids. I don't need that daily email. I don't shop as often for their clothes because they last longer now. So understanding how people kind of naturally live and cycle through their own life can help you figure out how you can change your communication, your touch points, and how often you reach out too. And then it does become more fulfilling for me if I'm not getting bombarded, and you can help me do some of that heavy lifting. I'm like, do I have to tell this one too? I don't want this every day. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, and one thing that you said previously was also the brand, you as the sender and the brand owner, you know your brand and you know how users interact with your product and with what you're providing. So like if, for example, if you're thinking 2 steps ahead for them, like, hey, a lot of times this, this, I think the example was the rug that you used when we were,
yes.
If a lot of times people buy 2 of these because if we need to throw like a washable rug in the laundry, we like to replace it and have one, while we're washing the other. So it's thinking ahead for your users. Like a lot of times these are bought together and we've seen this as success, and you don't need to show it as you're trying to upsell. It's really just you're connecting, like this is what has worked. This is a success story. So we recommend this to you.
Yeah, the more helpful you can be, you were saying, Jennifer, you don't need the stuff about the kids' clothing anymore, but yeah, maybe you can send them awesome tips that if you've got the data of how old you've seen Jennifer buy for this age and this age for this amount of time, you can infer how old Jennifer's kids are. So you can actually send some like really helpful tips and tricks on how to manage things. You might not be buying clothes as much, but you can still have a valuable customer story there. If someone's shopping at a clothing store, don't send them information. They're only shopping for men's fashion, men's shoes, men's tops. Don't send them information about home and garden or women's fashion. You keep to what and that means going off the email platform. That means going into the CRM and seeing what this person has purchased and whatnot, but link all that data together, because the more information you have, the better this relationship can be. Because if you don't know someone, there's nothing worse than being in a relationship and the person doesn't know you. It's like, here we're going out for seafood dinner. I'm allergic to fish, so definitely, these might just be a name on the other side, in the computer for you, but they are human beings. And if you think of them mostly as human beings instead of instead of that $36 email ROI, these are humans that you can help. And they want to receive your email if you do it correctly.
I like that. And thinking about the relationship, and a lot of times I think we think about that first part. I want my welcome nurture series. I want to bring them in, make this super exciting. And then if you take email out of it and you think about relationships, you always hear those jokes about, oh, we've been together forever. What are you doing today? Nothing. And that intention, and you said that at the very beginning, Ashley, be intentional. It's sometimes I feel like the intention falls away because you've had them for so long. And you're like, well, they're going to stay with me. They've been with me forever. But I feel like you always want to be constantly intentional. You constantly want to nurture. So how do you nurture? How does your nurture series change from the welcome to I've been mailing them for 3 years? What else can I do to nurture them? What else are they going through? What are they dealing with? Or how is my product changing? Or what new things do I have to share with them? And it doesn't even have to be stuff that you're selling. What other initiatives are you doing in the world? What other partnerships are you doing that are really engaging and fun? And, I saw the Super Bowl commercial where Netflix and I believe GM electric cars are coming together. And it just seemed like an unlikely partnership, but it still makes sense because they're both pushing, climate stuff, potentially. And so you got the electrical vehicles and like, let's bring that in so we can help promote that. So what are the ways can you either partner with someone to then help your customers, or, really cool things that can just put you out there more to get more awareness about what you're doing as a brand? And if you're not sure what's going on with your customers, test. Find the uncharted territory, right? Test.
Yeah.
What else can I do to figure out and get more data if I don't have it?
Yeah, I think I was just pausing because I really like that. I think that's a really, it's a really nice other pillar. You have partnerships outside of your brand, and it shows that you care about impact in the world, and going back to just representing like who you are and your like your brand's voice. And that's super important, staying consistent and also showing that you're growing. Going to the relationship piece, like just because it's comfortable doesn't mean it needs to be the same, or it doesn't need to be fun. So, I mean, the very basic thing is trying to, not going to lie, I think everyone loves just like a discount code. Like that is very basic one, but it also is engaging. I mean, it can help folks know that, hey, we're paying attention, and knowing that, we're seeing that you're dropping off a little bit, but we still appreciate you, and we want you to come back and engage with us. And then maybe that's where you say like, here, we have a new newsletter, or here's our upcoming events, going back to the regional or the events that are going on near a user. I think highlighting the partnerships is a really wonderful idea. I really do. I think that is, it's building your brand. It's showing that your user that, you are human on the other side as well. And these are the things that you care about and you stand behind as a brand, and how they can come in and support that as well.
Excellent. So we talked a little bit about, we touched on it very briefly, Jess, I think reactivation. And that is because you're getting those signals that things are changing with your customer. But if the reactivation doesn't work, you do get to a point where you have to consider, how valuable is this email to me? And do I need to dispose of it in some way, or put it on the side? What is your advice as you start to get to like the end of life with this email, or the parting, the breakup, so to speak? Because there are some that hopefully will last forever, but then there are some where it's like it's time to go. What's your starting advice around that?
Oh, the parting is such sweet sorrow. I've been waiting to use that the whole time. But yeah, so when it's time, maybe they haven't engaged. And I always say, 6 months is a really good benchmark. That's what Spam House has told us. That's what Microsoft has told us. So if someone's not engaging in 6 months, it's time to go. And one of the things, it's really hard for marketers to say, well, I have this email address. I want it to, want to keep mailing to it, but you have to think about, not only are you harming your relationship at that point with the recipient, you're actually now beginning to harm your relationship with the mailbox providers as well, because the more unengaged data you're sending, the more the mailbox providers are going to start filtering your mail, because they think that your mail isn't wanted, and it actually is not wanted. So, I think that, having that sunset policy in place, so you can like hit whatever metric it is. If maybe your metric is they haven't opened or clicked or forwarded in 6 months, then it's time to, say goodbye. And, parting is hard, but it is, the fact of email and life. So don't be afraid to have that sunset policy. Don't think of it as a loss, because once you're not spending money on that recipient who isn't engaging anymore, because again, you have a whole bunch of folks who aren't engaging, that makes your program a really pricey waste of time, because you're losing ROI. Why don't you focus that money into getting new people who might be more interested, and then you have that raise of ROI. So don't be afraid of the sunset policy.
I like that. And Ashley, you mentioned data before. So what would you recommend for senders who they understand I shouldn't be mailing, or I know that there's something going on with unengaged that maybe I shouldn't mail them, but how do they justify it to those who say, I want you to mail it anyway? Or what can they come back with?
Yeah, I think the first thing that is super helpful is to understand, going back to data is power, it's key. Knowing how much your emails, how much a single email is worth is one. That's step one. That's going to help in any compelling story. Two, it's a lot of times like the larger, it's a common thing that the larger the list, the more users we're reaching, but that's not the case when it comes to email necessarily. So one thing that just popped in my head actually is the saying that when one door closes, another opens. You do need to close the door, because that's going to benefit your program long term. If you keep all these doors open, it's going to impact your reputation. All mailbox providers in this industry of email we want to deliver mail that is wanted and to the inbox. So that's really that's what these key players are trying to do. So if we consistently are sending to users who are giving us the signals back that they don't want our mail, they are not engaged, this isn't relevant anymore, we need to pay attention to that. And maybe that is, we do have a stricter sunset policy, but shortening our length of our customer or recipient life cycle is going to build us a long-term reputation and a good standing reputation with mailbox providers. So to go back to your question, I think the conversation that needs to be had is, hey, we're starting to see reputation issues. Our engagements, our internal KPIs are not being met. And this is the impact to our revenue that is happening. And here's what we know, we need to build up that positive engagement back with mailbox providers, rebuild our reputation so that, we can hit those internal metrics. And that's another thing. I would definitely say, make sure that you do have internal KPIs that you want to hit. And that doesn't always need to be, of course, like open engagement. It's what are we building internally, and are we meeting those goals? So yeah, I think the more data that you have, the more foundation of what success means to you is key.
I think that is a beautiful point, because, and it all ties together. So you've got your internal KPIs. You also, and this is where I think it's a dance a little bit, especially when you're thinking about letting emails go. You have to balance your marketing needs with the mailbox provider needs and your customers' needs. And although sometimes they butt heads, it's really important to understand the balance there, because the mailbox provider's goal is to deliver mail that is wanted. They don't necessarily want to drop mail or falsely classify it, but they also have to protect their systems from abuse. And so the only way they can do that is from the signals that they get. And I think about that as a stadium. And if you have a stadium of one person screaming, this is amazing, that's awesome, that person loves it, but it's only one person. I'm not really sure about everything else that's going on. 10 other people that I haven't heard from yet might not like it. So it's not enough. But as you start to get that volume in there, and if it's only like 2 people and then 100 people who aren't saying anything, it doesn't make a big impact. But if you have all 100 screaming, it's really good. It makes a much bigger impact. And if you have a lot of people booing, even if there's some saying yes, that also changes the dynamic of what you as the receiver need to do to change. And it could be like, all right, this performer is just not doing well. I don't think I'm going to welcome them into my stadium anymore, or something like that. So understanding what they need and then balancing. And if it doesn't match, is email your only way to communicate? Because you could lose them in email, but maybe just push them to another channel. So you're not really losing them. You're just communicating in a different way.
There's a question that came up. Is there a target open rate, or maybe like some sort of benchmark that would let us know when something's, when we need to take a second look at something, or especially with, the shifts in Apple MPP and all that, that's something I'm curious about too.
Another word that one day will be unspoken. Don't talk about MPP. Jess, I'm going to have you answer this one.
Yes, so I'm going to say it is dependent on your marketing mail versus transactional. There's not one solid number. This is it. For marketing, I say look at 10% open rate, unique open rate, but with MPP. So taking that into account, because your unique open rate before MPP, with MPP might now be 35%, but when you look at that MPP rate, it's really like 10. So I think 10 is a good benchmark with MPP, but you definitely need to keep that MPP in mind. So you really need to make sure you have a solution that does take that data and put it in context.
It's interesting that you have 10 because and with MPP involved, because I used to tell senders you should be around 20. This was before MPP. And it really depends too, because some providers 10 might be that sweet spot, but some maybe were heavily Gmail might say, no, you need a little bit more. So with that in mind, knowing that everyone sees something different as your benchmark, I would say, look at where you're at now. If you're at 10 and you're happy with your internal KPIs, then 10 is your benchmark. If you are not happy, then bump it up. You want to say, I need to aim for this. How do I do that? Is it that I need to pull out unengaged so I can bump that up a little bit and then nurture and bring back some of the unengaged in some way and at some point cut them out? But you want to make sure that there is enough good noise to outweigh any kind of bad noise, because there's always going to be bad noise. There's always going to be a complaint. Sorry to interrupt you. I would say, something just popped in my head. I would say, instead of thinking about, is this, what percentage do I need? Exactly what you said, are you hitting your KPIs? But also, make sure you're utilizing things like Microsoft SNDS, these outside sources, Google Postmaster tools. If you're at 10% and your Google Postmaster tools is, medium or below, it needs to go up, you need to start pulling, as you said, Jennifer, pulling out those unengaged and making sure you have more engaged recipients. Now, if you're at 10 and your Google Postmaster tools, you're at the highest it can be, it's green and it's beautiful, maybe that's where you need to be. So utilizing those outside tools in addition to your internal KPIs is really helpful here. And if you have someone who is a deliverability consultant like Ashley and myself, you lean on them. They'll help.
I'd also just add here too, a lot of folks are wondering, like, how do I decrease the folks that I'm in, maybe the dead weight, if you will. And I think one place to start is to look at the frequency. If you don't know this already, look how many emails a single recipient is receiving across your platform within a certain amount of time. And a lot of times I look at like the past 30 days, and if they're receiving, for example, over 30 emails in that 30-day period, that is a lot of emails. And that's what I would consider is high frequency. I mean, just thinking for myself, if I received 30 plus emails from a brand in one day, that's a lot. So if you need somewhere to start, I would say, look how many emails a single recipient is receiving in a certain amount of time, and can we reduce that a little bit? That's a little bit more of a broad solution, but it is helpful to just decrease some of the volume and frequency that's going from your domain and IP.
And I'll say, although it is such sorrow to part, I guess acting is not my forte. It is better to, once you look at all of that data, to get ahead of when they're going to say enough is enough. You want to sunset them before almost they sunset themselves. Because, and I think, Jessica, you may have said that phrase earlier, but think about it this way. I would rather have a breakup and say, hey, are you still interested in me? And then they say no. old school child way, like circle yes or circle no. But if you can part in a way that's friendly, it's going to do much more for your program than if it is not amicable. If they complain, that's a negative mark against your program. Even in the olden days of email, spam complaints are huge negative signal, and they are today. So you want to make sure that as you start to learn more about your data and you can see someone's new and they generally trickle off around this month or this year, we start to get complaints here, and some that you can't predict. Some people will just complain, maybe that you didn't meet the expectations up front. But if you realize that, and no engagement is also a negative signal. So if you can start to get ahead of that a little bit, they can always come back to your program. Make sure your program can take them back in. Just because they're gone today doesn't mean they won't come back tomorrow. In 20 years, if I have grandkids, I might go back to that one store that maybe I didn't want emails from anymore because now I want to buy clothes from there. So make sure they can come back in, but be okay with them leaving for now.
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead. No,
So you're good. Sorry, I thought you were done. But yeah, going back to that, not only, you could be hurting your actual brand image. I know for me, if someone is sending me emails way too often and, I just don't want them anymore, or maybe they don't honor and unsubscribe or something like that, I'm less likely to shop at that store because that brand has been impacted to me. So, as you said, Jennifer, having that amicable breakup, is really more healthy because, if I have an amicable breakup with a brand, I probably will still shop with them again. But if someone is spamming me or they are not honoring and unsubscribe, or they're just, bombing me, I'm probably not going to shop with them again, just because that the brand has been impacted in my mind.
excellent. All right. So we do want to leave a little bit of time for Q&A. So before we jump into that, I want to just give you a little parting slide, and I'm pulling it up. So give me a second. I have to share my screen. There we go. Oh, is it showing now?
It's showing.
Awesome. So there we go. So we've talked about a lot of this stuff, but I think it's important because we talked a lot about many things, but what are the things you want to take away with you? Right off the bat, no consent, no mail. And when you're building that reputation, and just think about dating, if you go on the date in your jammies, it's going to be much harder for someone to want to go on that second date than if you go dressed up and looking like you're intending to be there. Again, it's about that intention. So it's harder to come back from a poor start than it is to rebuild with a history of, okay, on the third date, we had a lot of great dates, but then on this one, they wore their jammies. So maybe it was just a one-off. So, building that reputation from the start is so important. Using your data, we've hit this many times. It's very powerful, but you have to protect it as well, especially with privacy in the world. You need to make sure that you keep it safe on your incoming forms so that you're not getting bad data, but also once you have it, you need to protect it. Make sure you have multi-factor authentication, that you're not giving access to people who shouldn't have it. Base all your strategies on engagement, and we've hounded that word quite a bit, and not volumes, even though you might get the directive. Make sure you have the KPIs and data around why volume isn't the only thing that you need to focus on. Remember to market to humans, because they're not just emails, and adapt with them, grow with them throughout their life. Send mail that people love. And if you don't know, test it. Make sure you're understanding how your KPIs are influenced by your program. So you might have an outstanding open rate and bad revenue. And so maybe open rate isn't what's for you, but it's the click rate or whatever it is that connects everything to what your end goal is. Know what that end goal is before you bring your email in. And then make sure you have your amicable goodbyes, because you want to leave the door open. Otherwise, it's going to get sealed shut. So those are our takeaways. We'll send those to you in our follow-up email. But now we have our time for some Q&A. Brian, have any more questions come in?
Let's see. Nope, don't have any more questions, but, so I'm trying to think of some common questions here.
Brian, we did actually just have one come in the chat.
Oh, we did.
I can read it if you want.
You got it. Okay, yeah. So the question is, how do you introduce a sister brand to your audience?
That is a very good question. I think if you are mailing, always mail from who you are. You don't ever want to say, I have a list, so my sister brand can mail to it. And I'm assuming I have the same definition of sister brand that you do. And if I don't, I apologize. But I think it's okay to introduce and say, hey, we've got a new brand coming out. You have as long as you have the consent to market and inform, you can let them know. But you have to make sure you're branding it from your brand and not this sister brand, because you got consent on your brand. And so that's what you're mailing from. And if that's what your intention is, like I just opened up a new brand and I want my customers to know, then just, you can introduce them that way. If there was another definition for sister brand, please let me know and we can try and answer it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it depends on the nature of the sister brand and also what they do and who their audience is, I think. Because, if you're part of a much larger conglomerate, you can have sister brands that do something completely different and don't necessarily, have an audience that has different pain points and needs, basically. So that's enough.
I love that addition, Brian. Maybe this question should have been for you because you deal with marketing.
Definitely something. Yeah. It's something we've had to think through.
Yeah.
But
it's important because if it's not, if your audience isn't their audience, why are you sending it? So I think that's a really good point that you make.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to jump in that, while it's totally awesome and okay to introduce a sister brand through your own logo and whatnot, as Jennifer said, maybe then you drive them to a sign up form on, the sister brand site. Don't keep just sending them the sister brand stuff with your logo, because that's not what the people have signed up for. Yeah, once or twice to introduce, great. Full time, yeah, don't do that. Make sure you're driving and getting permission to send to the sister brand.
And then also just going back to data is power, look at how the results are. Was it something that that folks didn't engage with? And if it is something that maybe becomes problematic or something, maybe that's where you can, these types of updates can maybe warrant their own authentication or their own mail stream too, just to segment and protect your other mail.
So a couple good questions coming in. I'll throw this out to you guys. How can you improve your sender reputation once it's heard? Can you?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Just coming from it goes back to one of our key takeaways. It's easier to build your reputation than repair it. A reputation repair plan is something that takes a really long time, or it can take a really long time depending on what the reputation issue is. I think the one thing to going back to it again is look at the data that you have. What are the signals that are being told? What are mailbox providers telling you? Is it because are you having like outright blocks due to spam? Do you have third-party tools where you can monitor like different spam trap addresses? Let's take a look at list hygiene. Once we kind of have the collective story, that's where we can build our plan out. And really what we want to do here is the very basic thing that I typically recommend is decrease the amount of negative engagement. So focus on the people that have engaged with your mail recently, target them and try to build that positive reputation back up. But if you can avoid getting into a bad place with mailbox providers and just keeping those best practices at bay all the time, that's really best case scenario, because reputation repair can be very, very hard.
And you want to make sure, as Ashley was talking about the third-party tools, have those set up before you have a problem. Have a deliverability consultant set up before you have a problem. Have SNDS postmaster tools, or maybe something like 250OK, eData Source, Inbox Monster set up before there's a problem, so you can be constantly monitoring, so you can constantly pivot your program and quickly pivot if needed.
Yeah, I'm going to throw Kickbox in there too.
Kickbox as well. Well, Kickbox you should be using at the beginning to make sure all that data is good.
Yep. And we exactly. So data quality is a big part too, when you think about sender reputation. If you are sending to bad addresses that churn, and you're constantly doing that, that's a negative sign that you're not taking care of your list. So those are things that you can do verification at the point of capture. One, so if you have a valid customer who's interested, why do you want to lose them? Because they put something in wrong. So you can help them say, oh, you typed it in wrong. But two, why infuse your database with that? So you want to make sure you have a clean database so you can move forward and then work on all those other best practices to really, it's a whole picture of what you want to do to make sure you have good sender reputation. And I would say the last thing I would add to the sender reputation is when you're looking at your data, find out when it started to go bad. Was it at the beginning or was there somewhere in between? And then try to figure out what happened. Did you somehow get attacked in your forms? Did you buy a list or find a partnership or acquire someone and you have a really bad list? What is it there? Because if you can't identify the problem, you're going to continue to have it. And even if you move IPs and domains, you're going to continue to have it. So you have to identify the problem first before you can fix it. And yes, you can fix it if you're willing to make changes. I've had some people are like, well, we can't change our business. You probably won't change your reputation then. So we are, I think, at the hour.
Yes, very insightful. We are, yep, right at the very top of the hour. So, hey, if anybody has any additional questions, you can definitely email us. I think, do we have the contact info?
Yes, sorry.
Kickbox.com is going to be us. And then for Twilio, of course, sales@twilio.com. So we really appreciate, everybody joining. I think it was really insightful. We could have gone through more, of course. It's quite a topic, especially talking about deliverability. It's just something that's constantly changing and evolving and something we need to constantly stay ahead of. So we really appreciate everybody joining. Are there any other takeaways or calls to action or anything that we want to leave the audience with?
I would say if you can, start following deliverability blogs so you can follow not just best practices, but what's changing in the industry. Authentication is one that has been around for a while, but I feel like it's also changed and the importance of it has changed based on the amount of abuse coming in. So definitely keep an eye on that stuff. And I'm going to steal an idea from before is get monitoring before you have a problem. And thank you to Jess and Ashley too, by the way.
Yeah, and one thing I would say, just going with the theme of today and just really what I tell, excuse me, everyone, is send mail that people want and that they love, because there's so much to email. But if there's one thing that I like to bubble it down to, it is just sending mail that people love, remembering that there are humans that you're interacting on the other end.
I feel like because the people who love you, if you fall into a big trash can, they're going to be the ones that pull you out.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I love that. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. All right. We appreciate everybody attending, and we will soon follow up with a recording and some relevant resources that are related to the topic. So appreciate it, everyone. Take care.